Hi, I'm Josh. I was born in poverty-laden Flint, Michigan to a blue-collar working family. I went from pulling weeds, washing dishes, and delivering pizzas to building a small business doing over $150,000 a month. I sold it and moved to Costa Rica with my wife and 4 kids. And on this podcast, we explore the secrets and the strategies that I used to win. Building your business is one of the hardest things you will ever do. So let me finally help you automate, grow, and someday sell your company. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again on the Quick Talk podcast. My name's Josh. You already know that. I'm happy that you're here with us today. I have a really interesting guy on the line, actually a highly successful, well-respected guy on the line that I recently met in Washington, D.C. His name's Michael Hinderliter, and he started 31 years ago as a high school kid pressure cleaning things. With really nothing, just a small little itty bitty dream. And he started washing fleet vehicles and things. I'll let him explain that. And today he runs a multi-million-dollar business, different entities, over 100 employees collectively. He's done a lot of good things for the industry. He's accomplished a lot. He's got humility. I'm excited to talk to you. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on. You know, I love finding people like you because you have the humility, you have wisdom, you have all this experience and knowledge you're willing to share. You're willing to give an hour of your life to serve people who maybe are starting out where you were 31 years ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine having access to the knowledge that you're going to share today back then? What would that have done for you?
Oh, wow. It would definitely reduce the learning curve dramatically.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your background for those people that don't know you. How did this all start for you?
Okay. When I was, I'll say around 14, my father, who had a power washing distribution business, had me working summers and evenings in his business. And as fate would have it, for most young teenage boys, you know, they get to the point where they want to be on their own and do things. And when I was a senior in high school, I wanted to go out and start my own business. And I started into power washing at that point, and with a primary focus on fleet washing. And it grew from there. And from there, I went on to college to get my accounting degree. It took me 6 years to do that. And of course, at the same time, I was still running the business primarily on the weekends. After the end of my 6 years, like I said, working the business and doing that took me 6 years. And in the summers, I would do added power washing services like building cleaning, drive-throughs, things that were more of a one-time type cleaning, tank cleanouts, all kinds of different odd jobs with power washing throughout the summer. And that worked out really good. It helped me get through college. It, basically provided all the income that I needed necessary to pay for my tuition. Never got a loan or anything as I worked my way through college. Graduated there in 91. And in 95, I started to look toward kitchen exhaust cleaning a little bit more. And in 96, I bought out a competitor here locally, and they had 2 full-time crews, two-man crews, and I had 1 crew. So I basically tripled the size of my business in a relatively short period of time. The unfortunate thing is that I hired employees. Well, let me rephrase it. The good thing was I picked up a good base of accounts to keep staff busy full time. Unfortunately, I didn't have any good employees, even the employees I had at the time. It took me 2 years to turn that business around. It was probably one of the hardest struggles or one of the more hard struggles, if I say that correctly, for growing my business at that time.
Employee issues are really the backbone problem for all of us, right? Even when you're small, when you're big, staffing, building a team, that is the rub. That is tricky. And maybe as a young guy, you acquired the business a few years after college. Do you regret buying a business? Do you wish you would have just expanded your own services? Do you think that the pain and suffering was good for you? I mean, if you could go back in time, what would you do different?
I probably would have done some better interviews of the employee or the employees and staff that were there. And if I could do anything over, it would be how long I invest in an employee before I decide whether or not my investment is, being fruitful. I think it took me a long time to finally realize that there are employees that aren't worth investing in. And there are personalities that you're able to recognize that don't need or don't want your input or won't want to succeed as you do. And there are those that do. And with time, you get better at asking the right questions and recognizing the personalities. And it almost becomes, I want to say, a second nature to see it and recognize it real quick. But it's not always that way. You're not always right. But I would say that I can get a pretty good feel for somebody within, 2 or 3 minutes, and probably within the first 10 seconds of just looking at it and seeing the way they hold their body and how successful they are or won't be within the company in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I agree. I always teach people to hire the personality and then train the skill. And for me, when I was young, okay, when your business is small and you're overwhelmed because you're the HR guy, you're answering the phone, you're doing the jobs, you're doing the estimates, you're doing the payroll, you're going to the bank, you're doing everything. When you need to hire someone in that environment, when you are redlining, for me at least, maybe you did this too, you want someone that's experienced so you don't have to invest all this time teaching them every little thing. And so you have a tendency to hire the skill rather than the personality. And because when you hire the personality, a person who's a good culture fit, at least in the short run, there's actually more work for us, right? Because you got to train them on all this stuff and how to do this stuff. But in the long run, at least for me, the personality fits are the people that can stay with you for years and they're a pleasure to work with and they can really grow your business, right?
Definitely. Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, so you bought that company, you had a couple years of employee school of hard knocks stuff going, and you guys did kitchen exhaust cleaning, which for people that don't know, that's where you go into restaurants and clean all the nasty things that are up above the grills, right? You go in kind of after hours in the middle of the night. That's a pretty competitive business from what I understand. How has the industry changed or that market changed from back then till now?
When we first got into it, there were still some people that would put like a fire retardant powder up into the hood system and just cover up the grease, and then it would continue to accumulate. And though that may have reduced the risk of fire and made the grease supposedly, turn into a form where it wouldn't ignite, it would choke off the system. So you had to go in there and scrape it at some point and power wash it. And that's really that's the biggest change, I think, in that industry. I came into it, probably about 7 to 8 years after that process had started. So there were quite a few people that were doing it with a power washer at that point. And now, I think it's pretty much unheard of if you're not power washing a system and cleaning it to bare metal. But there's still some guys out there that do the scraping process, and they scrape it and clean it with rags, that kind of thing. But I think it's an inferior cleaning method, and it just takes a lot longer.
Yeah. So how did you grow your business in regards to sales? So you did the stuff on the side, which is an amazing business for a young college kid, by the way. Great money on the weekends. You're doing fleet washing. You're doing odd jobs. Then you get out. You have an accounting degree, so you must be a total numbers nerd, which is cool.
And then, somewhat.
And then you buy a business.
The only thing I would change about that is I probably would try to have gotten more knowledge on the people management side of it. Understanding that and philosophy or not psychology probably would have helped me a lot more.
Yeah, you could have been a little more armed going into your acquisition in 95. So you buy this other company with a couple crews. It's kind of a nightmare for a couple years. It starts to turn around. I'm assuming at that time, the phone was ringing. You were making sales. You were sort of starting to get a decent base team in place. What was going on to drive your sales to build such a huge company that you have today? How did that start?
And I almost hate to admit it at times, but I never was very good at the marketing side of the business or doing the sales side. It was just, it was just a tough thing to go out there and accumulate more accounts. But, for me, it was just a simple process. You go out there, you make cold calls and knock on doors, and then just continue to follow up with them and just be persistent at following up and making sure they remember your name and who you are and that your service is available, and be in the right place at the right time. Because the frustrating side of sales is you don't want to hear no. You want to pick up the accounts the first or second time you call on them. And admittedly, I had that kind of success. But to grow the business over time and to get those accounts, it was a matter of just continually following up, just doing the basics, making sure they remember you, trying to touch that contact enough times that they remember who you are when they have the need.
Oh, so good. That's so good because, listen, I work with a lot of younger people, And they want a magic secret sauce. They want the secret little pills, fairy dust that they can sprinkle on their business. And they want to do all this digital marketing. And they're a company that does 25,000 in revenue and they're spending $5,000 on a website, but they don't go out and knock on doors. They don't go out and meet people. They don't they don't even answer their phone when you call them. And I totally agree. It's the fundamentals. It's blocking and tackling, throwing and catching. I mean, what would you say to a young guy who's trying to do 17 different things and none of them are working tremendously well? What would you say to kick his butt into gear?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, the thing of it is, you need to do all those things. But what I would do? I would figure out where he is most productive, and then try to hire out the other, or find, either outsource it or find a person to come in and to handle those behind the scene type things that he's not good at or she's not good at, and then focus and do what you're good at, where your skill set is. I wouldn't say that there's one magic thing that someone should do, because there's a lot of important different things when it comes to running a business. You just need to find out what your skill set is best suited for, and then work with your skill set.
I agree completely with that as well. And here's another problem. Let's put your accounting hat back on, because the young guy, what they do, we tell that what you just essentially said, Michael, is learn to delegate, right? You need to stay in your sweet spot. Don't be a round peg trying to go in a square hole. Do what you're best at most of the time, and what you stink at less time. That makes sense. But what happens is I can already hear them. I can hear them off in the distance saying, I can't afford to hire or delegate someone, Josh. I don't have any money. And the reason, I'm waiting for your comment on this, but to me, the young businesses choke the life out of their company because they take way too much personal income way too soon. They can't delay the gratification. Give us a little insight into your thoughts on that, and then also the cash flow side of things when you started to hire and grow and buy equipment and handle all that.
Yeah. So I'm going to use, I want to say around the 10 to 15 year mark, I started getting all these letters in the mail from consultants wanting to help me grow my business. And I brought one guy in, didn't want to pay him what he was asking. I brought in the second guy a couple years later, and didn't want to pay him what he was asking either. And quite honestly, it was ridiculous. It literally would have choked down my company. But one thing I took from that process is, as these consultants came in and offered this insight, everything they said I already knew. And they were very good at what they did. But they learned where my skill set was. They learned where our deficiencies were, and then they would be able to do out the roadmap to get it done. And one of them told me, he says, I can help you get in 6 months what's going to take you to get there in 2 years. And, that conversation may have changed based on who they were talking to. And I'm sure that it probably did. It was a very frank and honest conversation. But what I learned through the process was I had to do a better job of delegating and finding those people that could do what I was trying to do, and trying to spread myself so thin that I wasn't doing any one thing good anymore.
Well, the deal is this, right? It's that if you're doing, how many things can you be excellent at? And how can you achieve excellent in 12 different categories, right? Excellence, I'm sorry. How can you do that? I'm reading a book right now by Gary Keller, the founder of Keller Williams Realty. It's called The One Thing. And I've read like one chapter, but I already get the premise. And the premise is you got to focus. And the thing you're focusing on needs to be something that you're talented at. And you got to do the basics, and you got to do one thing at a time. And that success is not simultaneous. Success is sequential. So it's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And it just makes sense. I mean, I interview all these people, and they all say the same thing.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. Yeah. And that's a great point. So, dealing with those guys, and like I said, I think they could have really helped me, but I couldn't afford them, one, and there was no way I could have afforded them. And secondly, it was for me to realize that I was spread so thin, I was never going to get anywhere. And so, I had to back off and start thinking about, okay, what's most important? What do I need to accomplish first? What's second? What's third? What's fourth? Just like you said, the sequential process to it. And from there, hire the staff, hire the people I needed. And as the entrepreneur, I found myself doing things that I really didn't want to do at times, but I needed to do them to get through them to build up to a point to where I could bring in, the higher staff and the employees that were that skill set, and to grow to a point to where I needed that particular skill set and I could afford it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
You got to walk through the fire. You got to do things you don't like for a little while. I like how Dave Ramsey says it. He says, if you live like no one else today, then someday you can live like no one else. And people, they quit the band before they get the record deal. They don't grind it out long enough, and they get frustrated. And there's a quote in that same book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. It says, if you chase two rabbits, you won't catch either one. And I love it. It says it was a Russian proverb or something. I didn't even know there was Russian proverbs. But the point is we have to focus. But you're also correct in saying you can't just focus on one thing in the beginning. You do got to wear a lot of hats. But that's time to grind, time to knock on doors, times to do the things you don't love to do, right?
Yeah. And it's a good time to learn and to gain that experience you're going to need for the later years, because then you have an understanding. Whereas if it was just handed to you and you fell into it, or you inherited it, whatever the case may be, or you bought somebody out, you still don't have that development that goes. It's like a child doesn't walk before he can crawl. So he's got a sense of balance before he gets up to walk. He has a feel of motion before he gets up to walk. And if you just jump into a business cold, you're going to have some major failures. And the fortunate side of, especially in power washing, is that you can grow it at your pace of learning and your skill sets. And you can even slow down and stop it at some point and just say, okay, I'm comfortable here. I don't really want to go much further. And there's a lot of people that do that. So
why is it that so many people, especially, I don't want to single out millennials, but it seems to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong because you're older than I am. I'm 34 years old. But it seems to me like people are very adverse to having any kind of pain in their life. Gaining real experience, they don't want that. They just want results right now. They want a $10 million business like Michael has. They want all the stuff that you have without going through 31 years of work and learning and real experience. You can't get experience except through pain and through growth.
Right.
Do you see that? Is it more prevalent now than it used to be?
I think so. I think it's a result of our culture and how we have, over the past 20 years, had a philosophy of rewarding without having a pain point to get to that reward, or having to put in the effort to get to those rewards. So now you have an entire generation, and this is my philosophy, that steps into roles that they think they should just be given, and there was never any work put into it to get it in the first place.
That is so good.
Yeah.
That is so good. And one of my favorite, I have lots of quotes. I'm a quote guy, sorry. But
no problem.
The deal is that everybody sees the wine, but no one sees the crushing of the grapes.
Oh,
right?
my goodness. No kidding.
How
Yes,
epic is that?
Definitely.
And when
definitely.
you meet a young guy that sees what you have and they say, and they want it right now, they don't understand. And there's something with our culture too, where people don't enjoy the experience, including me. I struggle with this huge. Every time I reach a goal, I move the yardstick. And then I go through pain and I'm not enjoying my life while going through it. And then I get it and then I move the yardstick. Do you have any advice for people like me, Michael, on did you enjoy your journey? I mean, you have this, beautiful business and you have all these people. What was your life and your family life like during the process of doing all this stuff?
Well, I would say that there were definitely points that were very gratifying, and there were definitely points that were an extreme struggle. And in all honesty, the first probably 10 years, until about 93, 94, maybe even 95, did I have the intention of staying in power washing. It was a vehicle for me to get through college and, one of my better opportunities. And as it so happens that Mr. Trump is running for office right now, I was listening to interview, or maybe been an audio tape or something on him, where he talked about his background was real estate, and he got into an investment situation in the oil fields and put in a bunch of money, lost his butt big time. At that point, he said, "I'm going to stick to what I know." And that always stuck with me.
There's a lot of wisdom there.
So stick to what you know, yeah. And even though the accounting thing was what I had thought about doing and stuff. All my friends through college told me that, I would never work good in a firm. I went and interviewed with some firms and walked out of those interviews with like, can I really do this? And finally, after the whichever, number it was, the third or fourth interview, I said, you know what? They're right. There is no way I can work inside the firm. My talents are running my own show and having my business and continuing down that path.
How would you like to hang out with me for a whole week? I'm talking every single day for 7 days. Well, you can. You need to join my 7-day challenge. It's completely free. It's a ton of fun. Every single day, you get a special message with a short video from me firing you up to get rocking and kick your butt into gear for your business. Just send a text message, 7-day, to 44222. You got to spell it out, SEVENDAY. Text it to 44222, or you can find a link at automategrowsell.com. Well, you seem like a really nice guy. When I met you, you're actually kind of big and buff, and you're this big, strong weightlifting guy, but you seem so gentle. What do you do when an employee drops the ball? I mean, how do you handle it? How did you handle it back then? How do you handle it now? Has there been any change in your aggressiveness and your discipline strategy? What are those conversations like?
Yeah, no, they're yeah, big difference from when I first started. I think as a young man, there's a lot of
testosterone. That's what you're looking
exactly.
for.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that, and there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of pride, and
I call it false pride, because the reason that we have that as young men is because we're really scared, and we're scared to fail, and we feel we have to prove to everybody how smart and great we are, and so we way overdo it, right?
Exactly. And I think back then, let me build up to this epiphany, but, so back then, there was a lot more aggression. It was more like you do it my way or the highway type thing. And you probably could have got away with it a lot more back then because you didn't have the millennials to deal with as much either. But now you have to figure out how to communicate with that group and help them understand. So there's a lot more training that goes into dealing with millennials.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but on colleges now for millennials, they have these little safe zones where like you can go so your feelings don't get hurt, where there's no free speech in this zone because, words are going to hurt you, Mr. Millennial. That drives me crazy. And look, millennials are awesome. I work with a lot. I have some that work with me, but there is something there. So yeah, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, so the approach is you have to get away from that. You can't. And even back then, if I could have done it different back then, I know that I would. So, it's more of and I've always had the approach that, I want to explain. Even back then, I wanted people to understand why we do things, but not to do it because I told them that's the way we do it. I want them to have an understanding because I believe that if they have an understanding, they can grow. And they can grow with the company, and they can help the others around them grow. So it's always important to me that there's an understanding as to why we have the processes, why we do the things that we do, and this is the reason that we do it. And it's also a thing of respect. I think your staff deserves a certain amount of respect so that they do understand.
To me, what you're talking about is very simple. You're talking about the difference between a manager and a leader. And a leader is someone who casts vision for their team, right?
Sure.
You lay out, this is who we are. This is how we do it, but this is why we do it. And this is what's in it for you when we do it, right? That's leadership. Management is a checklist. It's like, do it. You didn't sign your form. I'm writing. You're done. Don't ask questions. Stay in line or fall into line.
Yeah. Stay within these lines. Yeah. And there's a time and place for both of those. I think it's a matter of how that mix is applied in the business and to the individual, because some people need the box, they need the line, and others need the understanding, and there's different levels. So yeah, and I would say that your guy out in the field is more likely to be the checkbox type guy and wants to be on a line, and you got to watch them pretty close, and you can give them the vision, the understanding, but a lot of times they don't quite get it, and they don't. Not only do they not quite get it, but a lot of times they won't even care. What they're focused on is getting home in the evening, spending time with whatever their priority is outside of work, and you're a paycheck to them. And at some point, they mature, and hopefully they mature while they're working for you, and they can move on to become supervisors or go into a sales position or find another place where they're ready to take on more responsibility. At that point, then they start wanting the understanding. They start wanting the information and the knowledge of what it takes to be better.
That is really good. And, I'm really glad you worded it the way that you did, because I talk a lot about the leadership, vision, passion, motivating side. But really, if I'm honest, you're totally right. There has to be both. And you can't just live in the clouds. You can't just say, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to ride unicorns and we're going to build this huge company.
Right.
You got to have the execution, the boots on the ground, the hard conversations, the checklist, the where's your paperwork? You didn't do that. This is unacceptable. And you don't have to do it with the testosterone fueled false pride ego, but it has to be done. It has to be done. So all businesses need managers and leaders.
And even though, we talk about that, the aggressive side of it, but I want to say that probably for the most part, I probably wasn't aggressive enough back then. I withheld it until I exploded, and that's not a good thing. So, learning how to approach it, and then because you never want an employee to reach the point to where you fire them and they're like, "What did I just get fired for?"
That happens,
and that happened a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and that happened a lot in the early days. That really doesn't happen anymore.
Well, because for you, it was building processes. Up. For you, you were frustrated on day 1, and then day 32, something else happened. Then day 63, another thing, and then now you're boiling it. And this guy doesn't even really understand you feel that because you don't clearly communicate.
You just hit the nail on the head. It's communication. It's learning how to communicate and communicate in a professional manner so that it's intended as to helping both parties, and it's not as an aggressive type. I told you this. Why aren't you doing it? Now I'm going to beat you over the head for it. Now, there are times when that's necessary because you've told them too many times and they haven't got it yet. But if you're trying to make cultural type changes and bring in new processes and stuff, that's going to take 60 to 90 days for that to happen. And it doesn't happen overnight. And you have to keep repeating, and you have to drive it over and over and over until it becomes a cultural change.
Yes. Oh, I work with so many small companies, and most of the people I work with do less than $500,000 in revenue, right? So they're kind of in that weird, awkward stage where cash flow is weird, and they never would have imagined how little money they would have when their business is doing $40,000, $50,000 a month, right? They're like, how is this possible? Because your cost structure is high, you're growing, you got capital investments. It's weird. But what they do sometimes with cultural stuff is they'll tell their employees one time. They'll be like, hey, guys, we're going to do this now. This is a new process. We're going to do 5 rounds to market. Or we're going to ask for referrals this certain way. All right, everybody, put your hand in. Okay, say ABC Clean Company on 3. 1, 2, 3, and then that's it. And they don't have that consistency in delivering the message. Like you said, 60 to 90 days. There's a lag period, right? It takes a minute because employees are skeptical and they want to see if you're really serious about this cultural shift. Is that your experience?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very true.
So this is a lot of really good gold nuggets here. I want to move in a little bit to powerwash.com and Power Wash University. I love power washing. I do. And we started as a window cleaning business, and we ended up doing roof cleaning and house washing and things. I have no idea the level of technical expertise that you have, nor did I ever want it. But there's something gratifying about washing a house and how amazing it looks, or doing flat work and watching a driveway. Tell us about that business. It's huge. It's growing. Tons of people use you to buy their equipment and things. What do you offer? What is Power Wash University?
Yeah. Well, first thing, the whole gratifying side of it is definitely there. I mean, that's a great thing about projects, because you get visual gratification as you're doing the work and when you're finished, and it's always a good feeling to be able to look back and be able to see what you've done and know that how good it looks, and it's immediate. So that's the great side to power washing, as you said there. As far as powerwash.com and Power Wash University, those two businesses complement each other. Powerwash.com is selling the equipment, supplies, chemicals, and just anything you need associated with the power washing process we have at powerwash.com. On the other side of the coin is Power Wash University, where that's the training. We have hands-on training courses where we bring people in. We have instructors that do the teaching. We can talk about the equipment that's needed. We can talk about the processes and how you go through it, what you should and shouldn't do. And it just, again, dramatically reduce that learning curve instead of going out there and, taking 2 or 3 years to just figure out the processes and how you're going to try to get something clean and get it cleaned in an effective manner. It's not that a guy can't get a power washer and go out and clean and do a good job. It's that he needs to learn how to do it efficiently, to have quality and do it in a reduced amount of time so that he can be profitable. Because if you can't do those together, you're not going to make it in the industry because you're going to have competition that can.
That's right. And I look at the business as really two-pronged. Double-pronged. How do you say that? There's two prongs. Okay, I think you know what I mean. So you have the technical side where you need to be a professionally competent technician. Like you don't want to, you can ruin stuff really quick if you don't know what you're doing. Throw a red tip on your pressure cleaner and start, blasting stuff. So that's important. But on the other hand, the back end of the business is important, like operationally in finance and how to market and how to grow. And do you guys cover those things as well?
Not right now. We don't have any business courses.
Well, you know what they need to do then? They need to sign up for my boot camp, which is the whole back end side. It's good.
There you go.
I see people in one of two camps. I see people who are technically incompetent and they start doing AdWords and they market the crap out of their SEO filled, website, but they don't have the technical side done. But the majority that I see is they're technicians, but they don't understand how to be businessmen or businesswomen. And to me, that's where you get stuck. That's why people get stuck at $100K a year. They can't break through that ceiling because they're really an owner, operator, artisan, technician, self-employed person. And, that's why I built my boot camp actually, is to help move people to the real business owner side of it, where they can do what you're doing. You're on a call. You have 100 employees. They're all out doing things. They're following systems. They have a leadership structure. They have a real career with you. And obviously, it took you a long time to do that, but there's little things you can do to improve the back end of your business really easily if you just understand. So do you have any parting pieces of guidance or wisdom or any kind of things you want to send people off with? Any words of encouragement?
Never give up. In the words of Winston Churchill, never quit.
Best speech ever, right? Never, ever give up.
Yeah.
We overcomplicate everything. I totally agree. So knock doors, follow up 462 times, never quit. Constantly work on yourself and you'll win. You can't lose unless you quit, right?
Yeah, exactly. And always be willing to change. I mean, I think, I project this on others, so I can't say that everybody thinks that this way, but I always thought that, there's going to be that day where I hit that point to where, okay, I'm there. This is good. And everything will be the same from this point on. Well, it's not, because the only thing you can count on is change, and things are always changing. So things are always going to change, and you need to embrace change. You need to be ready for change, and you need to look forward to see how change can benefit you.
I agree. I probably said this 10 times on other episodes, but I'll say it one more time. Imagine in the early 1900s, you had a company and you made horse and buggies. You made the carriages for buggies, right? And then Henry Ford comes along, and you don't want to change because you are really good at making these buggies, and the wood and the work craftsmanship is top notch. And the person that was in that business that wouldn't pivot, that wouldn't change, that wouldn't, see the coming trends, got ran over like a freight train by the market. And today, the market changes faster than ever before. It's continuous change. It's constant innovation. And so with technology and operations and working with millennials and understanding the trends of the future, and all those things are super important, even for power washers, even for people that are just technicians. Like, I just want to reiterate what Michael's saying. Don't even just be willing to change, to actively seek continuous change and improvement in small ways. That's what I would say.
Exactly.
All right, Michael. Well, thank you for your time. You've been very generous here. I'll, put some links in the show notes to this episode, everybody. If you want to check out powerwash.com or check out Power Wash University, if you want to learn how to expand your business, maybe add on some different services and do it the right way, Michael is your guy. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Hey, thanks for hanging out, friends. And from all of us here at the Quick Talk Podcast team, we hope you loved today's show. We hope that you were inspired to become a doer and not just a listener. Apply what you've heard today in your own business and watch things change for the better. Lastly, remember that all the money in the world can't save your soul. Seek first the kingdom of God, my friends. We'll see you next time.
For more information about the Quick Talk Podcast or Joshua's other businesses, visit our website, quicktalkpodcast.com. Have a blessed day.